Grassroots Analytics Insider. I'm Julia, and today we're here with our new CEO, Meghan McAnespie. Welcome to the pod.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Of course. I would love to just jump right in and talk about how you got to Grassroots Analytics.
About 5.5, 6 years ago now, I've been here at Grassroots now for 4.5. I was working in digital fundraising and had a client who was running for Congress. She was an incredible candidate, a social worker, so definitely did not have the big wealthy network to back her up.
Right.
And Grassroots Analytics was already working with her. She'd had such strong fundraising already. And so I started to work with the team here to, kind of dive in to see what Grassroots was all about.
Right.
Sort of the capabilities of just like data analytics and ability to be incredibly specific with targeting was unlike anything I was seeing from anyone else in the space that we were working with. And so more and more I started talking to Danny. Grassroots at the time had been more heavily focused on sort of the call time aspects of things. And so he was calling, asking me questions about the digital fundraising side of stuff. I'd be emailing with Joey, which now it's just so funny to look back. He's now our chief data officer. And so looking back at those original exchanges and being like, oh, you will be a person who I spend so many of my waking hours with in the future. And so starting to talk to Danny, and Danny was, saying you should come to Grassroots, you should bring a lot of this here. And especially we were in that period of time where we were coming out of the pandemic, out of COVID, and a lot of workplaces were deciding to sort of stay mostly virtual. I love to be in the office. I love to be around people. So that gave me sort of like a final little push at the time to come in and see what Danny was talking about. From there I joined originally just as like digital director. We weren't even quite sure what that meant to be the digital director at Grassroots. But over the years, was able to really evolve that and, help contribute to what we've built here at Grassroots today.
Amazing. I love that. I love when people come to us and they were a client first. It just speaks so well to like what we're doing and who's involved. When did you start caring about politics and why?
I think that I first started caring about politics, like really just based out of what my parents had taught us, which was to care about people. Both my parents are in the teaching profession. One of the first like political memories I have is going to vote with my parents and being like incredibly excited that the local elementary school did have a bake sale and the brownie that would be there afterwards. Still very food motivated, so I guess this tracks. And I think that my parents like really first taught us like politics as being local, right? I think that was a election for like our school committee members at the time. And so have always just sort of seen politics as that extension of like, if you care about people, then you need to care about who's going to be in charge and making the decisions that can make people's lives better. And so I think that that's just really where that has started for me and really continued throughout. I've also always been incredibly competitive, really hated losing at Sorry as a kid. And I do think that politics, in the professional arena sort of can be a great profession for folks that also have that like competitive edge part of things.
Right, but not sports. Yes. Totally agree. Okay, so you said that you were digital director at Grassroots when you first got here, and then you moved on to chief innovation officer for 4 years. What is that?
As I had to assure my parents, it is a real job. They're like, okay, chief innovation officer. Luckily, they understand CEO more. I'm like, see, guys, I promised it was a real job all along. But what that meant in terms of the day-to-day here at Grassroots is really championing anything new that we were doing, as well as looking to support anything new that was happening out in the space at large. And so that came down to everything like just like wholly new endeavors that we were going on, experimenting with them, seeing does this make sense to be like a big thing that we roll out to everyone. But it also means like these smaller innovations day to day on the things that we already do here. I think that it can be easy to really like lean back on what you've already known or already proven, but especially in like the two industries that we sit at the intersection of, which is politics and technology.
Yeah.
Things are constantly changing, and
Absolutely.
if you are not changing to meet that moment, you're not going to be able to show up in the best way that you can. And so it was really that balance of both like the big new ideas and then also just making sure that across the board we were constantly leveling up and innovating on what we were already doing.
Amazing. What an exciting time. You also saw that position through several election cycles, which is really, really cool.
Some of them were cool.
Right. Some of them were less than cool. But some good ones across the board.
Yes.
So something you like to say in that vein is that GA is always doing things differently. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think that something that I really appreciate about what we do here at Grassroots is that we aren't afraid to take like the harder path, right?
Right.
I think a lot of times like it is the hard things that are worth doing. And we go down a lot of these roads that turn out to be nothing, right? If no one else is doing something, maybe it's because they've already discovered that it's a bad idea, right? Or maybe it's because it has the kind of roadblocks that usually stop folks.
Sure.
I think this is especially true in politics when people are so focused on just the next cycle and the next cycle.
Yeah.
And we've been really successful at like putting the time, effort, and energy into something that like we know is not going to find its audience until the next election cycle. But that during the current one we're able to be experimental with. And so I think that that's like a big part of it. I also think that there's just some things that are unique about Grassroots, like even just structurally, right? Like us being in the office 5 days a week,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Us having like such a diversity of clients, right? Like a lot of folks in the space might have a sort of niche when it comes to what political clients they work with, or they may not even work with nonprofits at all, right?
Sure.
But because we have such a wide range of folks here, I think that we're now at over 900 total clients for this cycle alone,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And that really is up and down the ballot, right? And is a like wide variety of nonprofits with like a lot of different issue areas that like we're able to do things a little bit differently just because of those sort of like structural functions, and not sort of being boxed into certain niches.
Right, for sure. All of this is serving the campaign fundraising space as well as the nonprofit fundraising space. Why do they demand us to be innovative?
I think that a little bit like I was talking about before, like it is the world out there that's changing. One of my first, I felt like Paul Revere, I got to Grassroots Analytics and I was walking around being like, iOS 15 is coming, iOS 15 is coming. Everyone was probably looking at Danny like, who is this insane person that you have hired to come in and is caring a lot about an Apple update, right? But that was sort of the update that changed a lot about how we were able to measure, email deliverability
Yeah,
and
for
clicks.
sure.
And so like when just that like actual landscape and like the tools out there are changing so much, it is like not a like, oh, it would be nice to level up or do some things differently, but like a fundamentally part of our success and being able to continue to be successful is meeting the moment and innovating in those ways.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a requirement, as you like to say.
Yes.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about like kind of the world that we're meeting. Can you talk a little bit about a time that you felt like GA really made an impact on the world?
Yeah, I feel like there's a couple of the like big wins, right? Like,
Sure.
which is awesome. Mary Peltola in Alaska, Maxwell Frost, first Gen Z member of Congress,
Sure.
Becca Balin in Vermont, and then just so many other wins that we like contributed in a very like small way, right?
Yeah.
But like we love to be a part of a team, and that's where a lot of the impact we have, right, is like playing one specific role for a lot of campaigns and being able to show up for them. But I think that probably like if thinking about like the impact at large that Grassroots is able to play is I really think about how often like we are the first people who talk to someone and like believe in them or let them have that feeling that like someone is taking them and their campaign seriously.
Yeah.
Someone's taking them in like their upstart nonprofit. Teachers Unify is a great example of that.
Sure.
Who had really like noticed the absence of teachers' voices in the debate about gun violence prevention.
Yeah.
And like we were some of the first people to like look at them, talk to them, say like, yes, like you are teachers who have not started a nonprofit before, but like we see the path, we see the vision. This is the thing that we can do to help you sort of get from 0 to 1. And so I think that it really is those moments for so many folks and the ripple effects that have is one of the biggest ways that Grassroots really like makes our impact in the day to day.
Oh, I totally agree. I love that. Okay, shifting gears from, you know, what we offer to our team here. You're now CEO, top of the board. What do you think it means to be a good leader?
I think it means obviously so many things.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the first things is that it means like knowing yourself, and a great leader is not like a one definition. I think that it really starts with knowing like your own strengths and weaknesses and how you can really use those strengths to like uplift other people, right? Like to give people opportunities, how you can make sure that any of the weaknesses that you have are accounted for in ways that like can make like the entire organization or the entire team you're leading, or even just like being a leader amongst your coworkers stronger. I also think that one of our new pillars this year is leading with curiosity and compassion, right? At the end of the day, like we are all people. I talk a lot about how we're in this space that's like really aiming to make the world a better place, right? And in the pursuit of that work, sometimes that mission can sort of like be seen as above all else, but like everybody at Grassroots Analytics shows up every day and they have the opportunity to make 70 people that show up here's lives better, right? And so I think that that compassion piece is always super important. And then also that curiosity piece of like always as a leader, like seeking what new or to really seeking to understand at like that higher level.
Right.
I also just think that like being a good leader really can mean making the like difficult for right now choices for like the greater good overall. You know, I talk a lot about how the more and more leadership responsibility you get, the less and less you're making the kind of decisions that are like, there is this right decision and there is this wrong decision. It becomes really about this balancing act of priorities. It becomes about trying to anticipate what certain things could mean in the future. And as anybody who's ever like gone to the gym knows, things that in the short term are going to be best for you in the long term are not always the most fun. And so I think that also in leadership, you have to be really cognizant of that and make sure that like we are doing the right things day in and day out for like the ultimate success of Grassroots Analytics.
Yeah, absolutely. What's a lesson or some advice you've gotten that you often return to when you're working?
I think that, as I kind of mentioned before, right, like doing the hard thing, really being worth it, and leaning in there. Sort of along with that, I've definitely learned that to like be truly great, you cannot settle for what you're already good at, right? Always really looking to like stretch yourself in those ways. I've also learned that people really rise to an occasion if you give it to them, right? I think that in order for people to really like reach their full potential, they need to have the space and the grace to grow. And I'm really proud of the fact that Grassroots Analytics is a place that, you know, if you make a mistake, if you are stretching yourself, folks are going to appreciate the fact that you took the risk or, you know, what you were going for there and see it as like a learning opportunity versus it being like discouraged to take those risks or leaps in the future because of, you know, maybe a not home run hit the first time. And I think I've also just learned that like, you can't make everybody happy all of the time, right? And that applies to like, you know, just this world at large, probably a life lesson as well, right? And so like how important it is to be really grounded in like your values, to be really clear-eyed on like what the mission is, like what, you know, knowing the impact will be in having that sort of guiding light instead of sort of trying to like respond to each moment.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Okay, so you touched on one of our new 2026 pillars previously, but is there another 2026 pillar that you want to highlight?
Yes, I think that as a continuation there, we decided on smart risks over familiar wins, right? And I think that it's going to be like more important than ever that we continue trying to like level things up and like really take those risks moving forward. And am excited for like all that is to come with such a strong foundation that we have, to be able to have like the room to play and experiment with some of those risks.
Cool. That's amazing. So what's ahead this year for nonprofits and for campaigns?
So in the nonprofit space as a whole, over this past year, we've really seen some of like the grants and the other sort of systems
Like
that public funding and all of that they've relied on in the past no longer be as reliable.
Sure.
While at the same time, there being need for a lot of the work that these nonprofits are doing more than ever. And so we definitely saw over the past year more nonprofit work being willing to be a little bit more experimental, being a little bit more willing to be in direct response to the news cycle in a way that they aren't typically. And so I really see us building on that this year, and making sure that we're helping those nonprofits like really delve into this world with like very sustainable practices, right? Like understanding like what the best way to approach a certain moment is for like their long-term sustained success. And so I'm definitely excited for like what we're going to be able to do for those folks in this really difficult time. For campaigns, I mean, it is the on year, right? We all know what that means. And I'm just really excited for a lot of folks that we've worked with in the past with some of like our more tried and true products, right? Them trying some things like mail is a great example that we haven't scaled as widely. And so we've already in this new year gotten a couple of those out the door and seen the checks come back. And I'm just excited that we're going to be able to be both like the support that those campaigns have always come to rely on, and also be able to kind of like level up some things with them moving forward.
Amazing. That sounds great on both accounts. And what are your overall priorities for Grassroots in 2026?
One of my priorities is just for us to continue having fun, right? I also think that one of the things that's great about working at Grassroots is like we have a lot of fun, like in the way of, you know, we were just at our retreat and we were bowling and all of those things. But that like the work itself can be really fun too, right? Like there just simply is nothing like a launch day, right? Like there's simply nothing like, you know, experimenting with different tactics for a nonprofit, right? And I think that, you know, us like just continuing to prioritize like the joy and the fun in like a lot of the times that like really hard work that we're doing is super important. I also, one of our priorities is just to like really run through the finish line with 2026, right? You know, as I was talking about, a lot of the things that we're like working on now probably won't have a huge impact this cycle, but will next cycle. And so I really want us to prioritize like putting in that work and knowing that like it's going to have that long-term payoff when it can be difficult in this space, right? To focus on anything but like the next week. And especially with such like a pressing timeline, but also just really want to prioritize that, like putting in the kind of work that's going to have that long-term payoff while still providing that kind of support that all the campaigns have come to expect from us.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to see what is in store for you and the team in 2026, and we hope to talk to you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you.